If Stalin had become president of the United States instead of Harry S. Truman, it would have dramatically altered both U.S. history and the global geopolitical landscape. Stalin was the leader of the Soviet Union and a key figure in World War II, but his ideologies and policies were vastly different from those of Truman. Firstly, I will analyze the characters of both presidents and then tell the probable outcomes. Joseph Stalin was characterized by an authoritarian and ruthless demeanor. He was known for his strong, centralized control over the Soviet Union, employing tactics of fear, coercion, and purges to maintain power. Stalin exhibited a domineering and often suspicious nature, resulting in the elimination of perceived rivals or dissenters within the Communist Party and society at large through purges, show trials, and forced labor camps known as the Gulag system. His leadership style was marked by an iron-fisted control over decision-making and a cult of personality, where he was portrayed as an omnipotent leader. Stalin's policies, such as rapid industrialization and collectivization, were often implemented with little regard for human cost, resulting in widespread suffering and loss of life. His rule was characterized by repression, control, and the establishment of a highly centralized, authoritarian state. Harry S. Truman, the 33rd President of the United States, was known for his straightforward, decisive, and pragmatic character. He was often seen as honest, unpretentious, and down-to-earth. Truman was a man of strong principles, known for his integrity and willingness to make tough decisions, even when they were unpopular. He had a reputation for being a straight shooter who spoke his mind, which earned him respect, but sometimes also criticism. Truman was seen as a diligent and hard-working leader, and his tenure as president was marked by his efforts to rebuild post-World War II America, including initiatives like the Marshall Plan and the establishment of the United Nations. He's remembered for his foreign policy decisions, including the use of atomic bombs in Japan and the doctrine of containment against Soviet expansionism, as well as his commitment to civil rights reforms. Overall, Truman's character was defined by his integrity, decisiveness, and commitment to serving the country's best interests. Here are some potential outcomes about hypothetical presidency of Stalin in USA. Cold War escalation denotes the rapid amplification of tensions, adversarial posturing, and heightened global friction between the United States and the Soviet Union that could ensue if Stalin assumed the presidency. This escalation would stem from fundamental ideological disparities, as Stalin's fervent advocacy for communism clashed starkly with the capitalist principles ingrained in American governance. Under his leadership, there'd likely emerge an aggressive foreign policy reflective of Soviet interests, potentially catalyzing a more assertive U.S. stance globally. This could prompt an exponential surge in military expenditure, fueling an arms race with a focus on nuclear capabilities, amplifying the already perilous nuclear brinkmanship of the era. The resultant environment might witness an intensification of proxy conflicts, with regions becoming battlegrounds for the superpowers' ideological struggles, potentially escalating into direct confrontations. The ideological schism would deepen, polarizing the world further and fostering an atmosphere of distrust, heightening the likelihood of global conflict and making diplomatic resolutions even more challenging, thus ushering in a precariously volatile era in international relations. Domestic policies. The potential impact of Stalin's presidency on domestic policies in the United States would likely lead to a significant overhaul characterized by a shift towards centralization and authoritarian control. Given Stalin's track record of strong central governance in the Soviet Union, his leadership might prompt an erosion of civil liberties, increased state surveillance, and stringent censorship measures to suppress dissent or divergent ideologies. There might be a concerted effort to expand government control over various sectors of society, including industries, media, and cultural institutions, aiming to align them with the state's overarching goals. This could result in a restructuring of the economy towards a more centrally planned model, potentially affecting individual freedoms, private enterprise, and societal autonomy. Civil society might face restrictions as political opposition or dissent could be labeled as threats to the state, leading to limitations on freedom of speech and assembly. Overall, the fabric of American society might witness a transformation towards a more authoritarian framework, mirroring elements of the Soviet system and potentially altering the fundamental principles of governance and individual liberties. 3. Global influence. If Stalin had assumed the presidency of the United States, the global influence and international relations of the nation would undergo a seismic shift. His leadership, rooted deeply in Soviet expansionist ideologies, could result in a reconfiguration of alliances and diplomatic strategies, altering the post-World War II international order. The United States might adopt policies more aligned with Soviet interests, potentially reshaping the trajectory of global organizations like the United Nations and impacting collaborative efforts for peace and security. This shift could lead to a reevaluation of America's role in global affairs, potentially unsettling existing alliances while forging new, unexpected partnerships. Furthermore, the reconstruction and stabilization efforts in post-war Europe might take on a different tone, influenced by the priorities and strategies driven by Stalin's worldview. Such a scenario might set the stage for a realignment of power dynamics and reshaping of geopolitical landscapes, significantly impacting the trajectory of global politics for years to come. Under Stalin's presidency in the United States, profound economic and social transformations would likely unfold, reflecting his centralized control and emphasis on state-driven policies seen in the Soviet Union. The American economy might witness a shift towards greater government intervention and planning, possibly adopting elements of a command economy with centralized decision-making. This could entail widespread nationalization of industries, increased regulation, and a prioritization of industrialization and infrastructure development. Agricultural practices might undergo restructuring, potentially leading to collectivization or government control over farming practices. Socially, there might be a reorientation of societal norms and values, potentially influenced by the principles of collectivism and state-controlled propaganda. This could lead to a redefined social structure where individual freedoms might be subordinated to collective objectives, altering the dynamics of societal organization and individual liberties within the country. Overall, such changes could reshape the economic framework and societal fabric of the United States, mirroring elements of the Soviet model and fundamentally altering the traditional American socio-economic landscape. 5. Cultural impact. Under Stalin's hypothetical presidency in the United States, the cultural landscape would likely witness a significant shift, reflecting the imposition of state-sanctioned narratives and ideologies. Cultural expression might be subjected to stringent censorship and control, mirroring the practices observed in the Soviet Union. Art, literature, and media could become instruments of state propaganda, aimed at promoting ideologies aligned with the government's objectives. Freedom of expression might face severe restrictions, potentially stifling creativity and diversity of thought. Institutions fostering artistic and intellectual freedoms might encounter challenges, with state-approved narratives overshadowing dissenting or alternative voices. This cultural climate could lead to a conformity of artistic expression, limiting the exploration of diverse perspectives and potentially altering the trajectory of cultural evolution within the United States, aligning it more closely with the controlled and state-directed cultural landscapes seen in authoritarian regimes.